Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free in the home of the brave?
Thank you so much, Michelle. Good afternoon. I want to welcome all of you on behalf of my existing and former Court of Appeals colleagues, Judges Siparik and Graffio and Reed and Smith and Piggott and Jones, Levine, Bellicosa, and Wachtler. Welcome to our Law Day festivity. You know, Law Day ranks very high among my favorite holidays. I have to tell you that early in the year, I begin praying for good spring weather so we can gather outside for the festivities with our governor, with our attorney general, with the president of the New York State Bar Association, our friends from the other branches of government, with all of you with red, white, and blue banners, with stirring patriotic music sung by the incomparable Michelle Perry Belches. It's really a great American holiday. But actually, it was the governor's inauguration on January 1 that relieved me of a tremendous worry, because I learned on that day that any temperature above 10 degrees was perfectly suitable for a warm and friendly and fantastic outdoor ceremony. In each of the years that I have celebrated Law Day as Chief Judge, my remarks have followed the theme set by the American Bar Association, originator of the very idea of Law Day nearly 50 years ago. Law Day, as I'm sure you know, is a celebration of the rule of law, the strength of our great democracy, a fitting contrast to the Soviet Union's annual May Day parade of military might, which was the strength of that former nation. Until a few weeks ago, it was fully my intention again to focus entirely on the American Bar Association theme of empowering youth, and I had more than the usual reasons for doing so this year. First of all, I have the good fortune to have been designated National Law Day Chair by the American Bar Association. And second, this year's theme of empowering youth is one that is especially close to my heart. There is so much to be done with and for our nation's youth, our next generation. It's their future, but it's our future too. In keeping with the theme of empowering youth, we had been planning major youth-oriented Law Day programs throughout the courthouses around the state of New York. And today, I want to mention just one initiative inspired by that theme, a comprehensive website that will connect young people, for starters, a high school audience, to our courts and to the law and to resources like mentoring programs and internships and other law-related programs that matter so much to young New Yorkers. We saw the website not only as a Law Day project, but also as a dynamic, ongoing resource for teenagers, as well as a catalyst for developing new partnerships and projects to empower youth. As of today, as of right now, at this moment, the website is fully accessible from the What's New page, though it remains a work in progress. I hope you all will find time to visit, and especially if you are a student, to send us your comments and your suggestions. I'm delighted that our website will provide a link to the New York State Bar Association's Youth Services Advocate Program that also is being officially launched right now. The State Bar Program will honor people aged 10 to 18 who perform voluntary service to the community in law-related projects. As role models for volunteering, those achieving the Youth Service Advocate designation will encourage and empower their peers to rise to the same level of service, hence its name, Youth Empowering Youth, much like Children for Children. I offer my congratulations to the State Bar Association, and I'm eager for all of us to hear more about this great project from our State Bar Association President, Mark Alcott. As these exciting plans were taking shape, we were shocked and dismayed to learn that once again, the state budget has passed without a long overdue salary adjustment for the New York State Judiciary. And I want to focus my remarks today on that subject. I know that to some of you, certainly not to all of you, judicial compensation might seem an odd subject on a day dedicated to empowering youth. Many of you here today have no trouble understanding why that subject has been elevated to the very top of our agenda. And I have not a shred of doubt of its relevance in the context of the full American Bar Association Law Day theme, which is liberty under law, empowering youth, assuring democracy. We assure a vibrant democracy for future generations through judicial independence, which is a cornerstone of our great nation. An appropriate judicial compensation is at the very core of judicial independence. But before saying another word, I want to extend a very special welcome to my colleagues and friends who are here today representing our 13 judicial associations, and I want to ask all of them, please, to stand and be recognized. I applaud every single one of you, and I am so proud of you and so delighted for what you do every single day. Our website is going to introduce young people to your work. Today, I'd like to spend just a few minutes introducing you to the audience. These are the judges. These are the judges of our family, civil, and criminal courts throughout the state of New York. They are extraordinary lawyers, exceptional lawyers who left law practice at the pinnacle of their careers, the very sort of people we want to attract and we want to keep on the bench of the state of New York. They did not leave law practice and become judges in order to grow rich. Instead, they made a deliberate choice to dedicate their lives to addressing the most vexing problems people have, to resolving these issues carefully, sensitively, efficiently within the law, to being part of a process that throughout the centuries has helped to preserve and protect and safeguard the most fundamental ideals of the United States. An independent judiciary has flourished for more than 2 centuries because of the conscientious and dedicated women and men like those who are here today, who every single day strive to do justice and earn the trust and confidence of the public. Treating others fairly is part of our bargain. It's our oath, it's our pledge, it's our promise for the privilege of sitting in judgment on our fellow citizens, for reviewing acts of government, for shaping the law that guides this great state and nation. This is the legacy we promise to preserve and protect and safeguard for our youth and for generations to come. Our judges expect to treat other people fairly. They have committed themselves to that. They should be treated fairly themselves. Don't you all agree? So imagine our distress when we learned just weeks ago that once again we are caught, trapped, and snared in the jaws of Albany politics. No raises for the judges, no retroactivity, not even cost of living increases, for no reason that is related to us or to the merit of our cause, and absolutely nothing that is within our power to change. To make matters even worse, if that is even conceivable, the increases have been openly supported by the leaders of government. They have been unanimously endorsed in the press all across the state, and I think that's quite remarkable, don't you? And they have been vigorously advocated by the bar, by good government groups, as essential to judicial independence and to our prized justice system. And what's more, no one disputes that the funding is fully available. So now tell me, does anyone wonder why we are upset? Could there be any question as to why the judges of the New York State courts are upset, distressed, angered? The fact is that our founders were, from our nation's very beginnings, concerned about securing the independence of the judiciary. They never dreamed that the judges could be thrust into a situation such as this, because they assumed that generation after generation, while they provided that judicial salaries could not be diminished, they knew that responsible leaders of government would see that the salaries were regularly increased so that the judges could meet their obligations and attain their independence. It was Alexander Hamilton himself, a great New Yorker, who worried that inflation could render fixed judicial salaries, in his words, penurious and inadequate, and we have certainly come to see that happen, haven't we? Exposing courts to undue influence unless the legislative branch raised judicial salaries to keep pace with economic reality. Only then, Hamilton wrote, could judges be sure of the ground upon which they stand and never be deterred from duty by the apprehension of being placed in an undesirable situation. Most definitely, the picture of our judges, hat in hand, on bended knee, begging and pleading for even cost of living increases these past 8+ years, is not what Alexander Hamilton or anyone else had in mind when they crafted the pillars of American government. Most definitely, New York judges did not envision that, because their pleas have gone utterly unheard for years, that they would earn less than their federal counterparts, less than their colleagues in comparable states, less even than brand new graduates, not yet admitted to the bar, entering private practice in law firms. Most definitely, this is not what anyone had in mind by the concept of judicial independence. We need the increases and we need the retroactivity that are fully deserved and could readily be funded. I must say, until just minutes ago, we were greatly encouraged by the news of last week from the legislature. And I know Senator Bruno stopped by a while ago, and we've heard from Speaker Silver, and I'm so pleased to acknowledge Senator DeFrancisco that you are here with us. You have been such an ardent advocate for us, and we thank you. The news of last week from the legislature and from Governor Spitzer that there will indeed be action on these critical issues, that bills have been introduced, that discussions are ongoing. All I can say on behalf of the judiciary, may this be brought to a successful conclusion. We all of us here, most fervently call upon you to bring this to a successful conclusion. This cannot, absolutely cannot go on. I'll tell you one thing we have proved beyond all doubt, and that is certainly that we deserve these increases, but we have also proved beyond all doubt that for once and for all, we need a better system, don't we? We need a rational, for once and for all, we need a rational system, one that is objective, one that is transparent. We need a commission system so that the judges of the state of New York will never, never again be in this unseemly posture. This bartering, negotiating business for any judicial salary increase, I have to tell you, is definitely not what was meant by a system of checks and balances. You don't get checks because of what you put in the balance. That's not what was meant by checks and balances. For our courts, for the public we serve, for the youth and future generations, we must at long last achieve what is just and essential for the vitality and for the independence of the judiciary of the state of New York. And with that preface, it is now my privilege to call upon Elliot Spitzer. I know this is an enviable moment to take this place, Governor Spitzer. And I noticed the mayor behind you, and I neglected to thank him for the good weather he promised. But it is now my privilege to call on Governor Spitzer, who for the past several years has enriched our Law Day ceremonies with his eloquent and powerful messages as Attorney General. This year, Governor Spitzer, we are especially interested in what you have to say. Once again, it is our great pleasure to have you here with us now in your new role. I'm pleased to present Governor Elliot Spitzer.
Thank you so much, Chief Judge Kaye. Now I know why you were so insistent all these prior months that I be here on Law Day. And I thought it was just the eloquence of my prior speeches. Good afternoon, Chief Judge Kaye, judges of the Court of Appeals, Attorney General Cuomo, presiding justices, and President of the New York State Bar Association, Mark Alcott, whom I do have to point out, I first met when I was a second-year associate at Paul Weiss, I think in 1985. Who would have thought this? Especially the way you edited that first memo I gave you. I am honored to join you once again to celebrate Law Day here at our state's highest court. The twin themes for this year's Law Day, assuring democracy and empowering youth, are absolutely essential priorities, not just for our judiciary, but for the executive and legislative branches as well. We can be assured of a vibrant democracy only if every citizen can fully participate on a level playing field. That is why, in addition to the judicial reforms I will discuss today, we have proposed to overhaul our campaign finance system and the way in which electoral districts are drawn. And our children, of course, are our single most valuable resource. Each of us, especially if we're lucky enough to hold public office, must do our best to ensure that every young person in this state, regardless of where they live or the circumstances in which they grow up, has a meaningful opportunity to thrive and to be empowered to succeed. Chief Judge Kay has set a high bar in this regard. Her unwavering efforts to restructure our state's courts so they are more accessible and better able to aid families in distress has already led to important reforms. My hope is that we build on these reforms by enacting even more significant court reform legislation this session. Today, I'd like to focus on an issue that I know is weighing heavily on all of your minds, ensuring that New York's courts have the resources and capacity to administer justice in a way that is fair, efficient, and deliberative. New York's courts have a proud history of administering this kind of justice. When the Court of Appeals met for the first time in 1847, the Albany newspaper reported that the impressive abilities of the newly selected judges, and I quote, furnish a guarantee that whatever is brought before them will be dispatched with proper facility and with a single eye to justice and right. That faith in the courts and its members proved to be well placed. Take Benjamin Cardozo. A member of this court for 18 years, Cardozo was central to the court's position as the preeminent common law court in the nation. Through path-breaking decisions like Palsgraf and McPherson, he pushed the bench to wrestle with the most difficult issues of the day, especially in the arena of commercial law, allowing the courts to serve as an engine for change while still respecting the prerogatives of the legislative and executive branches. Although his shoes are hard to fill, it is no surprise to any of us that many decades later, Chief Judge Kay pens her own opinions at his desk. This tradition of judicial excellence and independence is one that I am tremendously proud of, as governor, as a former attorney general who's had the privilege of appearing in our courts, and as a citizen of this state. But I recognize that it can continue only if we provide the necessary support. Obviously, one key element must be adequate judicial salaries. This issue, unfortunately, has been with us for a long time. Back in 1805, before he became a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Joseph Story warned his colleagues in the Massachusetts legislature that adequate judicial salaries were necessary to ensure the independence and integrity of the state judiciary. Compensation, he said, should be sufficient, and I quote, to command the first talents in the community and to ensure those who are learned and honest, as well as those who are great and rich, the participation of those judicial honors. 200 years later, the numbers speak for themselves. New York's judges have not had a pay raise in more than 8 years, with their pay held hostage by the legislature. Let me restate that. With their pay held hostage by the state legislature. The Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court recently said that the failure to adequately compensate federal judges has created a constitutional crisis, and our state court judges make even less than their federal counterparts. I know, and your Chief Judge has made clear, that there is grave disappointment about our lack of progress on this front. That frustration is fair in my view, and immediate relief is the only appropriate response. To that end, I included legislation with my proposed budget and have just announced a program bill that would provide a substantial retroactive raise in compensation consistent with what the Chief Judge requested as part of the judiciary budget. While I could not persuade the legislature to include this increase in the enacted budget, I continue to be hopeful that we will be able to get beyond petty politics and enact this long overdue increase this year. The legislature should pass this bill immediately. But increasing judicial salaries is not enough. We must also confront the serious problems created by the arcane structure of our courts. Everyone here today knows that New York's court system is balkanized and hard to navigate in ways that are just too costly. All too often, litigants must appear in multiple courts, file redundant sets of papers, and await decisions by each court in turn. The result? Tax dollars wasted, justice delayed, and inevitably, sometimes, justice denied. The convoluted structure of our state courts is in large part an artifact of history, but one that has proved remarkably resistant to repeated efforts at reform. The time has finally come for change. Under the current system, we pay too much and our citizens get too little justice in return. A streamlined court system with just 2 tiers instead of a confusing array of trial courts will make resolution of legal disputes more expeditious and less expensive. For these reasons, court restructuring is one of my top priorities. Judge Kaye's commission on the future of New York State courts took a key step in the right direction by conducting a thorough review and analysis of the court system and providing a specific proposal for reform. I am taking the commission's proposal one step further by proposing a constitutional amendment that would make the commission's recommendations a reality. I look forward to working with the judiciary and the legislature to bring these much-needed reforms to fruition. Finally, I believe it is critical to ensure that legal services are available to all New Yorkers, regardless of their financial circumstances. One issue under consideration is how we ensure that indigent New Yorkers receive an adequate defense when they are charged with a crime. However we structure and finance these services, as a matter of basic fairness and legal mandate, we must make sure that we deliver on this guarantee. Access to legal services in civil matters is also essential. Without legal assistance, many New Yorkers simply cannot avail themselves of legal protections in areas where they are most vulnerable, like housing, child support, and domestic abuse. Pro bono work goes a long way, and I applaud the many lawyers in the state who contribute their time and energy to opening the courthouse doors to those in need of help. But I believe that the state must meet the bar's efforts with its own commitment to improving access to justice. To that end, this year's budget includes more than double the amount included in last year's budget for civil legal services and provides that money in a more secure funding stream. Both the Chief Judge and I made this increase a priority in our budgets, and I am gratified that the legislature shared our view about its importance. In closing, let me say a word of thanks. Those of you who serve on our state courts form one of the pillars of our democracy. I am confident that together we can continue to make New York's judiciary an institution that is one of the fairest, most accessible, and most open in the nation. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you next year as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Governor Spitzer. We greatly appreciate your words. The word, especially crisis, rings very loud and true for all of us. We are greatly encouraged as well by the activity we know is taking place across the street. And for the judicial branch, may I issue an injunction, please? Make this happen. It is now my great pleasure to call upon our Attorney General, Andrew Cuomo, and as he makes his way up, I want to extend a special greeting to the Solicitor General, Barbara Underwood. So glad you're here. And of course to our great presiding Justice Cardona as well. Always good to see you.
Thank you very much. It is truly my pleasure to be here today. And Governor Spitzer, who's doing extraordinary work as governor, but attended this function for 8 years as Attorney General, where he was a national force for justice. And let's thank him not just for his good work as governor, but the great work he did as Attorney General for so many years. Governor Elliot Spitzer. Presiding Justices, Bar President Alcott, Judges of the Court of Appeals, and Chief Judge Judith Kaye. It's truly my honor to be with you today. I'd also like to recognize Judge Leslie Leach, who has joined us as the State Counsel in the Attorney General's office. It is unprecedented that a sitting Supreme Court judge would join the Attorney General's office. I like to kid the judge that it was his way of leading the crusade for pay raises. He just went out and got one. Now, we have other vacancies, and we want other judges, but something tells me it's not going to be about the pay raise. Hearing the Chief Judge and hearing the Governor, I think the winds of progress are blowing in Albany today. Can you feel it? The Court of Appeals is a monument to the practice of law at its finest. And Chief Judge Judith Kaye has symbolized that excellence for over 2 decades. And let's give her a round of applause. I had the honor of being sworn in as Attorney General by the Chief Judge, by that well-worn legal doctrine under which the Chief Judge swears in all Attorney Generals who are the son of the governor that actually appointed them. Doesn't happen every day, but I used it just the same. My father clerked here at the Court of Appeals under Judge Adrian Burke, which started a lifelong reverence for the court, which he instilled in me at a very young age. When I was about 11 years old, my father was in private practice and he was preparing for an argument in the Court of Appeals, and he was working Saturdays and Sundays, and even when he was home, he was working on the brief, and we had to whisper so we couldn't disturb my father. I remember because I was bothered because I liked to talk even then. But it seemed like it went on for weeks, but then on the day he was going to give the argument, he actually let me accompany him up to Albany. And we got in the car in Queens and we were driving up to Albany, and there was total silence, no radio, but his lips were moving because he was mouthing the argument that he was going to give when he got to the court. And we were on the thruway, and there was a noise, and the car started to shake, and my father pulled over on the shoulder, and he got out and he walked around the car and he got back in, and he looked at me and he said, "We have a flat tire." And I saw a look of fear across my father's face for the first time. Now, don't tell him I said this, but Mario Cuomo was not the most mechanically inclined person. But that day, he got out of the car, he opened the trunk, he grabbed the spare, he grabbed the jack, he changed that flat tire in a time that would make a NASCAR pit crew jealous. Because his fear was not only that he was going to be late for the argument, but also that he might violate the legal doctrine of entering the court with unclean hands, literally. That day, Mario Cuomo turned into Mario Andretti. We made it up the thruway, we made it to the court, he gave his argument, he won the case. But it taught me an important lesson, and that reverence stayed with me all my life. And this setting today, the very setting itself, makes the point that my father taught me, the theme of Law Day today. The Court of Appeals standing for the power of the law, and the state capitol standing for the honor of public service. And what a powerful combination they are together. Unfortunately, there are obstacles today that threaten the effectiveness of both the judicial and the executive and legislative branches. First, we face economic obstacles at both ends of the employment spectrum. Young lawyers seeking to enter public service, as well as more senior lawyers serving in the judiciary. A starting salary at my office or a DA's office or a clerkship is a mere fraction of the starting salaries on Wall Street. For young lawyers, this is compounded by the high cost of education. A law school graduate can have several hundred thousands of dollars in debt. And as a result, for young lawyers, public service all too often is not just a viable economic option. To help address this problem, I think New York State should consider establishing a loan repayment assistance program to provide financial assistance to the best and brightest young lawyers who are committed to public service. Other states have established such programs, and I believe New York should do no less. The economic obstacles facing public service attorneys at the beginning of their careers are even greater for judges, who are more senior, have more life obligations, and even greater opportunities in private practice. Public service, my friend, should not pose a choice between providing for your family and doing good for your community. That was not the idea. And as you've all heard today, so eloquently and so strongly from the Chief Judge and from Governor Spitzer, let's take today and commit ourselves to put all politics aside. Let's insist on judicial pay raises, and let's make sure it happens this year finally. And as both the Chief Judge and the Governor have pointed out, we also need to improve the operations of our court system. We know how our court system evolved and developed, but knowing how one arrived at a destination does not necessarily mean one is at the right place. Chief Judge Kaye's Commission on the Future of State Courts has done extraordinary work, and with Governor Spitzer, we have an extraordinary leader committed to reforming the courts, and we should take advantage of it. Our convoluted trial court structure is overly complex, and simplification is long overdue. The legislature should be permitted the flexibility to add additional Supreme Court justices as the population grows. I believe Judge Kaye's vision and Governor Spitzer's leadership are a powerful 1-2 punch for reform, and I'm optimistic that working with the legislature, progress will be at hand. But my friends, we need to do something else also. We need to restore the very reputation of public service. I don't need to tell you that popular culture all too often depicts government in an unflattering light. It is unfair, it is untrue, it is destructive, and it must be refuted. Everyone here today knows that public service is a duty, it's an honor, it's a necessity, and it is an art form when performed well. As lawyers, we have a special opportunity to demonstrate, as Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, that we can live greatly in the law, because a life in the law provides unique opportunities to marry our skills and training with an important public mission. We have to renew that legacy. The legacy of John Jay and Alexander Hamilton and Benjamin Cardozo and Franklin Roosevelt, that the law is a powerful sword and an impenetrable shield in the battle for true justice, for social justice and racial justice and economic justice. And that's our real challenge, to reframe the vision of public service for a new generation. And let me end where I began, because this setting does say it all. And as you're here today, look closely at these buildings. The Court of Appeals, built in 1842, and the state capitol, finished in 1899. Look at the architecture, the craftsmanship, the marble, the mahogany, the stonework, the art, the carvings, the obvious time and care taken in building these magnificent public institutions. Imagine the pride and respect for the law and for government that inspired the creation of these masterpieces. They glorified these institutions, and they deserve no less pride today. We must honor that tradition by restoring that profound respect. And on this Law Day, let's set a new standard and restore the value of public service in both reality and in perception. And let's reaffirm that simple but profound truth, that at the end of the day, there is no greater contribution that one can make than to use one talent and time on earth to make this place a better place. That's what you do every day, and that's what public service is about. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, General Cuomo. I most sincerely hope that the press today will report that everyone here was blown away by the speeches. I'd like to call next upon our State Bar President, Mark Alcott. And Mark, as you make your way up, I'd like to specially introduce the person seated alongside you, Kate Madigan, the incoming President of the State Bar. And this gives me an opportunity as well to express the thanks of the entire New York State Judiciary to the New York Bar for its very, very supportive efforts on achieving justice for the New York State Judiciary. I know that Joseph Awad, the president of the trial lawyers, is here. I know that Barry Kamens, the president of the City Bar Association, is here. Our thanks go out to you, to all of you who are engaged in this struggle for justice alongside us. And with that, President Alcott.
Thank you very much, Chief Judge Kaye, Associate Judges of the Court of Appeals, Governor Spitzer, Attorney General Cuomo, presiding justices of the Appellate Division, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Law Day 2007 was conceived as a celebration of youth and our future. It should be an occasion to launch initiatives that will engage young people in our legal system, a time to advance new ideas and reforms that will strengthen the courts and the profession which their generation will one day lead. But as you've heard so passionately and repeatedly today, recent adverse events have forced us to change our focus. Instead of helping young people to learn more about the fairness of our system of justice, we must urgently deal with an issue of fairness to the guardians of justice, New York's judges. And one of the unfortunate consequences of the failure to enact a salary adjustment is that it has overshadowed the carefully planned outreach to our nation's youth and has distracted attention from the extremely important reform agenda. It's particularly distressing that last week, when the governor put forth an exceptional program of court structure reform and judicial selection reform, a program that we strongly endorse, and when our chief judge today is the proud national chair of a nationwide convocation to empower youth, a theme that we warmly embrace. Little attention was paid to these important initiatives and events. But how could it be otherwise? We want to look to the future, but our judges' compensation is stuck in the past. It has been, as you have heard, more than 8 years since New York's judges have received a pay adjustment. That is the longest hiatus for any judiciary in the country, and it's unacceptable by any reasonable standard. Yet the stalemate continues. What makes the impasse so frustrating is the near universal agreement that our jurists are entitled to an adjustment. The governor, the legislature, and the media have all said so. Indeed, there's virtual agreement on the required amount. And while it is colloquially referred to as a salary increase, in fact, it is little more than a cost of living adjustment to get our judges back to where they were 8 years ago. So I say to those who hold New York's purse strings, don't turn your backs on our judges. The time has come to put politics aside on this important issue. The time has come to provide fair compensation for our judiciary. And the time has also come to adopt a long-term solution that will eliminate politics when future increases are needed. We stand with Judge Kaye and echo her call for an independent quadrennial commission to review judicial compensation in the future. The failure to act on judicial salaries raises issues that go beyond fairness and equity. It threatens the independence of the judiciary, one of our core values. Freezing judicial compensation, causing the real dollar value of judges' salaries to erode and decline, forcing judges into the position of being supplicants to co-equal branches of the legislature whose acts they have a constitutional mandate to review without fear or favor. Sending a message to the public that our judiciary is held in low regard. These actions and failures to act undermine judicial independence. Our nation's founders understood the linkage between judicial compensation and judicial independence. In the clarion call to freedom that marked our nation's birth, the Declaration of Independence, America's founders identified specific examples of tyranny by King George III, and the indictment expressly included his usurpation of judicial autonomy. In the words of the Declaration, the king made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their office and the amount and payment of their salaries. And here we are, 230 years later, again confronted by this issue. And we face this problem at a time of heightened threats to independence of the courts and the legal profession. Independence of the bench and bar are the cornerstones of our legal system, the enduring concerns of our association, and they are irrevocably linked. That's why those who attack courts and judges also attack lawyers and the legal profession. So our Bar Association is in the vanguard and always will be in the vanguard of the fight to defend the reputation of our profession, resist political interference in our court system, and preserve the independence of the judiciary. And there has never been a time when our courts were more deserving or more in need of our support. Our courts are grappling with the defining issues of our era. They are on the front lines of the battle to preserve due process and our constitutional birthright, while the country is locked in a grim struggle with a lethal but almost invisible adversary. And they are engaged in that battle at a time of zealous attack against courts, judges, and lawyers, attacks that threaten the independence of our legal institutions. Make no mistake about it, our courts are under siege. I am not referring to disagreements about controversial decisions. As lawyers, we have such disagreements all the time. I'm referring to efforts to intimidate judges, strip them of their authority to serve as neutral arbiters of disputes, as we've seen in so many instances in recent years, including the Shivo episode, including the shameful response to the Kelo decision, the habeas stripping bill, the outrageous jail for judges ballot initiative and the like. Courts have no armies, no weapons. They depend on their moral authority, and society undermines that authority at its peril. Now, of course, controversial decisions will generate debate and criticism, and so they should. A decision is fair game. Criticizing a decision is not only appropriate, it's healthy. Lawyers do it. Dissenting or reversing judges do it. Law professors do it. And certainly talk show hosts and political leaders are entitled to do that as well. And that's so even if the criticism is strong and vigorous. There may be a level at which the criticism is so harsh that it is problematic, but the bar is set quite high for that. The distinction we must draw is between criticizing a decision on the one hand and attacking the judge who made the decision on the other hand. Personal attacks on judges as biased, corrupt, personal attacks on judges as biased, corrupt, impeachable, and the like are problematic and require a response from the bar. And I can assure you that our bar will always stand up in resistance against those kinds of attacks. In some generations, judicial independence has been threatened by tyrannical dictators or invading armies. In our generation, the threats to judicial independence arise from ideological passions, cultural disputes, and the need to preserve freedom, liberty, and due process while fighting a different kind of war. And in this state at this time, the independence of our courts is also undermined by the failure to provide fair and adequate compensation for the judiciary. Now, today's threats to independence and integrity of the bench and bar are no less real than those of an earlier age. They require our constant vigilance and passionate advocacy. They require us to speak our minds and raise our voices, and I can assure you we will always do so. By doing so, we send a strong, clear message to those for whom Law Day 2007 was originally conceived. The young men and women of New York, our future CEOs, legislators, teachers, judges, lawyers. Our actions will show them that democracy works and that our judicial branch shall forever remain autonomous. No matter how compelling the other issues confronting us, we can never forget how important it is to empower young people who are the future leaders of our state and nation. Today was supposed to be a day to empower youth, and we will not ignore this call. So on this Law Day 2007, in addition to fighting for salary adjustments for our judges, to defending the independence of the judiciary, we are launching our Youth Service Advocate Program, which will recognize and honor people, young people, ages 10 to 18, who have provided a specific high-level number of hours of law-related volunteer service to their communities. Participants will identify a need faced by the court system, the district attorney's office, public defender's office, attorney general's office, or other law-related government agency, and they will develop a project to fulfill that need. As they carry out the project, they will learn about the agency they're helping. Potential projects include acting as peer mediators in youth court, participating in Juror Appreciation Week, and giving courthouse tours to the public. Young people who volunteer deserve recognition. This designation is more than an honorary title. The exceptional youth who qualify as youth service advocates will become role models in their communities and will empower and inspire their peers to do likewise. This program will help our young people to develop the knowledge, experience, and character they will need to become fully engaged citizens and leaders who understand and enhance our court system and our legal system. So let's send a message to our future leaders and to New Yorkers across the state that we too possess strength and character required to make the right decisions. Let's send the message that our judiciary will remain independent, that our judges will be compensated in a fair manner, and that we will make the future of our legal system secure for those to whom we will eventually pass the baton. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, President Alcott. Well, I guess on the message of the day, we have established that we are unanimous on the history, and that's a good thing. We are unanimous on the rhetoric, that's a good thing. So now what we need, let's be unanimous on the reality. Let's make this happen. Let's make this happen. I'm pleased that Assembly Member Lee Weinstein has joined us representing the Speaker. Let's make this happen. I'd like to call upon our Chief Administrative Judge, Jonathan Littman, for the presentation of the Merit Performance Awards.
Good afternoon. We as Americans have uniquely set aside one day each year, Law Day, to reflect upon and celebrate our system of laws, which is so fundamental to the strength and vitality of our democratic society. As part of the New York Court of Appeals Law Day celebration, we have instituted a very special tradition to recognize members of our workforce who in their day-to-day professional and personal lives epitomize the highest standards of public service and good citizenship. We continue this tradition today by honoring the remarkable achievements of 4 individuals chosen from among thousands of deserving and dedicated court personnel. Before I proceed with the award ceremony, I want to thank our honored guests, Governor Spitzer, Attorney General Cuomo, State Bar President Alcott, and the terrific judges of the Unified Court System, so many of whom are here today with us and who we are so proud of for taking the time to join us on this Law Day 2007, which we have devoted to the critically important issue of judicial independence with judicial compensation at its core. Nothing could be more important to the well-being of the judiciary, and nothing could be more important to those of us in the judiciary than to honor those employees of the state court system who day in and day out support that terrific and wonderful judiciary. So it is my pleasure to call the just terrific, distinguished employees who are this year's winners. I'd ask Jeanette Helms to come up for the 2007 Merit Performance Award for Superior Work Performance. Jeanette Helms, Deputy Chief Clerk, Erie County Surrogates Court. Jeanette Helms, in a relatively short period of time, has made a lasting impact on the Surrogates Court in Erie County, successfully spearheading the conversion of the court's 400,000 plus paper records to a new computer tracking system. While this was a tremendous achievement from a technical point of view, it was the way she went about it that won the admiration of her supervisors and peers. For months at a time, Jeanette seemingly spent every waking hour at the courthouse, hiring, training, and supervising employees, and overseeing every aspect of this important project. Thanks to her tireless efforts, the employees of this very busy court now have a modern computerized record system that enables them to better serve the court's most important constituent, the public. For her extraordinary perseverance and dedication, we are delighted to present Jeanette Helms with this year's Merit Performance Award for Superior Work Performance. 2007 Merit Performance Award, Community Service and Humanitarian Pursuits, John J. Brennan, Esquire, Law Clerk, Herkimer County Supreme Court. Please come forward. For John J. Brennan, service towards others is a way of life. This generous individual has given of himself in so many ways, serving as a guest chef at his local rescue mission, as an assistant basketball coach for youngsters, and as a moot court judge, to mention just a few. But John really took his efforts to the next level when he formed the committee to honor every surviving Herkimer County World War II veteran with an expense-paid trip to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. John organized a big send-off, a welcome home dinner attended by hundreds of people, and even made sure that medically trained personnel accompanied the veterans on the big trip to the nation's capital. It is indeed an honor and pleasure to be able to present John J. Brennan, who does so much for others, with our 2007 Merit Performance Award for Community Service and Humanitarian Pursuits. The 2007 Merit Performance Awards for Heroism, Francisco Casiano, Court Officer, Bronx Family Court, and John Strandberg, Senior Court Officer, Kings County Supreme Court. Please come forward. Court officers Francisco Casiano and John Strandberg are assigned to different court locations, but fate recently brought them together as they watched their children play a halftime basketball scrimmage at Staten Island's Wagner College. Officer Strandberg was standing nearby when Edgar Cortado, the supervisor of officials for the Northeast Conference, collapsed in the bleachers. He rushed to his aid and was quickly joined by Officer Casiano. The pair immediately began performing CPR and used a defibrillator to administer 2 shots to Mr. Cortado's heart, which fortunately resuscitated him. Thanks to their training and quick actions, Mr. Cortado was saved from a potentially fatal heart attack. It is our great privilege to present this gallant but humble pair with this year's Merit Performance Award for Heroism. Thank you all.
Thank you to Judge Littman. Congratulations to today's honorees, and thank you for your important work. Thanks, by the way, to all of our absolutely terrific court employees for their work every single day. Yes. I would like to call upon Michelle Perry to bring our ceremony to a conclusion. Many of us here have very important work to do. I'd like to call on Michelle to conclude our ceremony with America the Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the frontier plains. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. God bless you.